The piercing wail of an ambulance tore through the night. Inside, Claire Bennett clutched her swollen belly, her fingers slick with sweat and fear. "Hold on, Claire," the paramedic shouted over the siren. We're almost there." But the words barely reached her. The pain came in waves so fierce it felt like her body was being ripped apart. She wasn't supposed to go into labor yet. The twins weren't due for another month. Her vision blurred, her pulse raced. Somewhere between the flashes of blue lights and the tightening grip on her abdomen, she whispered one name: David. Her husband, the man who was supposed to be by her side. But he wasn't. Across town, David Grayson was at the Hilton Skyline rooftop, laughing with his mistress, a champagne flute in hand. The city shimmered beneath them, and his phone buzzed again and again on the table. He didn't even look. "Ignore it," the woman purred, brushing her fingers against his collar. "Tonight's about us." Back in the ambulance, Claire's world was collapsing. The monitor beeped wildly. "We're losing the second heartbeat," the medic shouted. Claire's body trembled as tears streamed down her face. She clung to the thought of her babies, the only reason she kept breathing. When the ambulance screeched to a halt outside Manhattan Memorial, a figure burst through the ER doors. Ethan Miles, David's longtime business partner. His hair was disheveled, his face pale. "Where is she?" he demanded. "Where's Claire?" The doctors rushed Claire down the hall, shouting orders. "Severe preeclampsia. Prepare for emergency C-section." Ethan ran alongside the gurney until a nurse blocked his path. "Family only," she barked. His voice cracked. "I am family." Inside the operating room, chaos reigned. Beeping monitors, gloved hands, bright white light. Claire's consciousness flickered in and out. In her haze, she heard one voice, a doctor muttering, "Her blood type doesn't match the husband's. That's impossible." Her heart flatlined for half a second, then another. The team worked furiously. Ethan stood behind the glass, helpless, his knuckles white as he pressed them against the cold window. He couldn't say it out loud, not here, not now, but the truth was clawing inside him. He was the father. As the doctors shouted orders and alarms blared, Ethan's phone vibrated in his pocket. A text appeared from David. "You better make sure she lives. She's my image, not my problem." Ethan's eyes darkened with something raw and dangerous. He looked through the glass at the woman fighting for her life, the woman he could never stop loving. And in that moment, he made a silent vow. If she survived, David would never hurt her again. The truth would come out, even if it destroyed them all. Before the ambulance, before the betrayal, before the hospital lights, there had been laughter. The kind that filled their small apartment with warmth. Claire Bennett once believed she was the luckiest woman in the world. David Grayson, tall, magnetic, ambitious, had swept her off her feet 3 years earlier in the most unexpected way. She met him while volunteering at a charity event for underprivileged kids. David had been the guest speaker, a rising star in Manhattan's business scene. His speech about building success with integrity had captivated the audience. When he approached her afterward, flashing that confident grin, she felt like she was in a dream. "You're the only one who didn't look bored," he joked. She laughed, not knowing she'd just met the man who would change and nearly destroy her life. Their love story moved fast. Within 6 months, he proposed under the twinkling lights of Central Park. Claire said yes through tears, believing he was her miracle after years of loneliness. He promised her the world, whispered about building a family, a home filled with laughter, and little feet running through the halls. At first, he was perfect. Flowers every Friday, late-night drives just to see the skyline, dinners where he'd toast to forever. She used to keep every note he left on her pillow. "You're my peace, Claire," one of them read. "Don't ever change." But forever came with conditions. After the wedding, David changed in quiet, invisible ways. His words became sharper. His time at work stretched longer. He started caring too much about appearances, the image of a successful CEO with a beautiful wife. Claire became more of an accessory than a partner. He'd correct her at dinner parties, mock her modest teaching job, and insist she dress more sophisticated. When she became pregnant, Claire thought things would soften. For a moment, they did. He kissed her belly, talked to the twins every night, even promised to cut back on work. But then came the long meetings, the late-night texts, the scent of perfume that wasn't hers clinging to his suits. She confronted him once. "David, "Are you seeing someone?" she asked quietly, her hands shaking. He didn't even look up from his laptop. "You're hormonal, Claire. Don't embarrass yourself." That was the night she sat on the bathroom floor, crying silently so the twins wouldn't feel her pain. It was also the night she sent a message to the only person who ever really listened, Ethan Miles. Ethan had been David's best friend since college, his business partner, and the calm opposite to David's arrogance. He'd been there for every milestone, the engagement, the wedding, the baby shower. But behind every polite smile, Ethan's eyes carried something he'd never say aloud. He was in love with Claire. He noticed the bruises David's words left on her spirit, the way her smile faded a little more each time David ignored her. One rainy evening, when David didn't come home for the third night in a row, Ethan showed up with soup and quiet comfort. Claire tried to be strong, but the dam broke. Her tears fell freely as she confessed how unloved she felt, how trapped she'd become. Ethan didn't touch her, not at first, but when she leaned into him, trembling, it was like two broken souls clinging to the only warmth left. It was one mistake, one night that neither of them forgot, and both regretted. Weeks later, when the test turned positive, Claire told herself the babies had to be David's, because if they weren't, her whole world would crumble. She never imagined that the truth inside her womb would one day explode under hospital lights. To the outside world, Claire and David Grayson were the picture of success. Every photo on social media showed them smiling in front of their glass-walled penthouse, her hand resting gently on her growing belly, his arm wrapped around her shoulder. The Graysons, one magazine had called them, New York's next power couple. Claire smiled for the cameras, smiled for the neighbors, smiled for everyone, except herself. Behind the walls of that luxurious apartment, love had turned into a performance. David's obsession with reputation grew like a disease. He wanted the perfect wife, the perfect home, the perfect family. Anything less made him furious. He controlled what she wore, how she spoke, even what she posted online. "You represent me, Claire," he reminded her coldly whenever she resisted. "We can't afford a single flaw." Her days became a cycle of pretending. Mornings filled with prenatal vitamins and quiet tears. Evenings spent alone, the glow of her phone the only light while she scrolled through articles about happy couples and wondered what she'd done wrong. David came home later and later, always smelling of expensive cologne and guilt. When she asked where he'd been, he would sigh and mutter about client meetings. The loneliness pressed in on her like a physical weight. The twins kicked inside her as if reminding her she wasn't entirely alone. She would place her hand over her stomach and whisper, "Mommy's here. You're safe." But deep down, she wasn't sure she believed it. Ethan called sometimes, always careful, always polite. He'd ask how she was feeling, if David was helping, if she needed anything. She always answered the same way, "We're fine." But he could hear the truth in the tremble of her voice. Once, he dropped off a basket of groceries at her door with a note that said, "Eat something real today." She cried for an hour after reading it. At one of David's corporate dinners, the facade finally cracked. The restaurant was candlelit, elegant, filled with laughter. Claire wore a pale silk dress that barely fit her swollen body. David's new assistant, Lila, sat beside him, young, stunning, and far too comfortable touching his arm. When the dessert arrived, Claire accidentally spilled a few drops of chocolate sauce on her dress. David's jaw tightened. He leaned close and hissed through gritted teeth, "Can't you do anything right? You look pathetic." The table went silent. Everyone pretended not to hear, but shame burned through Claire's veins. She forced a smile, murmured an apology, and excused herself to the restroom. Inside the stall, she pressed a trembling hand against her stomach. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the babies. "I didn't mean to make him angry." That night, when they returned home, David didn't speak. He poured himself a drink, loosened his tie, and stared out at the city lights. "Do you have any idea how much damage you did tonight?" he said finally. "These people invest millions. You think they'll trust a man whose wife can't even hold a spoon steady?" She wanted to scream, to tell him that she was exhausted, nauseous, and terrified, but instead she nodded and whispered, "I'll do better." He smirked, satisfied. "Good, because if you embarrass me again, there'll be consequences." That night, Claire lay awake listening to the rain tapping against the glass. Every drop felt like a countdown. The marriage she had fought to save was crumbling, and she didn't know how much longer she could pretend. But what she didn't know was that someone else, someone much closer than she realized, had seen everything. Ethan Miles had spent years watching the Graysons from the edges of boardrooms and dinner parties, wearing the same polite smile that hid everything he could never say. He'd built the company with David, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. Yet lately, he felt like he was helping a stranger climb higher on a ladder made of lies. It began subtly. The missed meetings, the unexplained withdrawals from the company account, the whispers from staff about special projects that didn't exist. Ethan confronted David once, weeks after the corporate dinner where he'd humiliated Claire. "You're losing focus," Ethan warned. "Our investors are nervous." David only laughed. "Relax, partner. You think too small. I'm diversifying." "Into what?" "Things you wouldn't understand," David said coolly, swirling his whiskey. "And don't look at me like that. I know you've always envied me, my success, my wife, especially my wife." The words hit like a blade. Ethan didn't respond, but his silence said everything. David's smirk deepened. "You think I don't notice the way you look at her? She's a fragile little thing, Ethan. That's what makes her useful. A perfect trophy. Sympathetic, innocent, obedient. People trust a man with a wife like that." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He replayed the look in Claire's eyes at that dinner, the flicker of pain, the quiet resignation. He remembered the tremble in her hands when she spilled the dessert. The woman he once knew, the one who laughed with her whole heart, was fading away under David's control. 2 days later, Ethan stopped by the penthouse under the pretense of dropping off company documents. When Claire opened the door, she looked pale, exhausted, her hands clutching a mug of tea like it was holding her together. "Ethan," she breathed, surprised. "You shouldn't be here. I just needed to see if you were okay." Her lips quivered. "I'm fine." But the bruise near her wrist said otherwise. Ethan's chest tightened. "Did he?" "No." She cut him off quickly, glancing toward the hallway as if David might appear at any second. "He just lost his temper. I shouldn't have argued with him." "You shouldn't have to," Ethan said softly. She looked at him, eyes glistening, and for a moment the space between them filled with everything unsaid. The night of weakness, the regret, the connection neither could erase. Then she turned away, whispering, "Please, Ethan, don't make this harder." He wanted to tell her everything, how he'd been investigating David's financial corruption, how he'd found evidence of money laundering, how he could ruin him with one email. But he couldn't risk dragging her into it. Not yet. The next week, the company hosted a press gala. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and David strutted through the crowd with Lila on his arm again, pretending she was just an associate. Claire stood off to the side, smiling for the photographers while gripping her stomach, trying to steady her breathing. Ethan was there too, watching from a distance, pretending everything was fine. But then something strange happened. When David stepped up to give his speech, a man from the audience handed him a folded envelope. David froze. For a moment, the mask slipped, the confident grin replaced by something sharp and fearful. He quickly pocketed the envelope and continued speaking, but Ethan saw the tremor in his hands. After the event, David vanished without saying goodbye. Later that night, Ethan found the truth. The envelope had been delivered by an anonymous whistleblower. Inside were photos of David and Lila taken inside his own home. And one picture showed Claire's reflection in the mirror, staring directly at them. The night it all shattered began like any other. Quiet, routine, deceptively calm. Claire stood in the kitchen of the penthouse, stirring soup that had long gone cold. The clock on the wall blinked 10:47 p.m. David was supposed to be home by 7. He had promised dinner together, promised to talk about baby names, promised 1,000 things he never meant. The phone buzzed on the counter. It was Julia Harper, her friend and nurse at Manhattan Memorial. "Claire," she said gently, "your blood pressure's been high. You need rest. Stress isn't good for the twins." Claire smiled weakly. "Rest is hard when your husband's working overtime with his assistant." Julia hesitated. "Do you want me to come over?" "No, I'll be fine." But she wasn't fine. The truth sat heavy in her chest, a knot of suspicion she couldn't swallow anymore. The strange perfume on his shirts, the lipstick stains he never explained, The canceled doctor appointments he claimed were non-essential. When she hung up, she opened her phone and scrolled through social media. Her breath caught. There he was, David, on a rooftop bar, laughing beside Lila. A flash photo captured them mid-toast, her hand resting on his chest. The caption from a gossip page read, "CEO David Grayson celebrates another record-breaking quarter with his team." Team. That word stung like a slap. Claire felt her pulse spike, her vision blur. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her car keys. Minutes later, she was in the elevator, still wearing her faded nightgown and slippers, her belly heavy beneath her thin robe. The building concierge called after her, but she didn't stop. By the time she reached the parking garage, the cold night air bit into her skin. The rooftop bar wasn't far, just a few blocks away. She parked, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. For a long time, she couldn't move. Then, fueled by heartbreak and anger, she stepped out of the car and into the neon-lit chaos. Inside, the music pulsed through the air. Laughter, glasses clinking, the smell of money and betrayal. Claire's eyes scanned the crowd and froze. There he was, her husband, David Grayson, the man she'd built her life around. And beside him, Lila, radiant in a red dress, whispering something that made him grin. Claire took a shaky step forward. David, his smile faltered. The color drained from his face. "Claire, what are you?" "I could ask you the same," she whispered. Lila's hand slid off his arm, but it was too late. The damage was done. Every person nearby turned to look. David's perfect image cracked right there under the city lights. He grabbed her arm roughly, lowering his voice. "You're making a scene. Go home." "I'm your wife," she cried, her voice breaking. "Your pregnant wife." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Someone recorded. David's jaw clenched. "Enough, Claire. You're embarrassing me." "Embarrassing you? You did that yourself." Before he could respond, a sudden pain tore through her abdomen. It was sharp, searing. She doubled over, clutching her belly. "David, the babies." Lila screamed. David froze, panic flashing in his eyes for the first time. "Someone call an ambulance." As chaos erupted around her, Claire's knees buckled. The last thing she saw before the world went dark was Ethan, bursting through the door, eyes wide with horror, racing toward her. And just before she blacked out, she heard him shout her name like a prayer. "Claire, hold on." Bright white lights burned through the haze. Claire tried to open her eyes, but her body felt pinned beneath a mountain. Voices blurred in and out, urgent, panicked, echoing through her skull. "She's losing blood fast. BP dropping. Get the surgical team in here now." She wanted to speak, to tell them she was still there, still fighting, but the words wouldn't come. The only thing she could feel was the rhythmic ache of her heart struggling to keep pace with the chaos. Outside the ER doors, Ethan paced like a man possessed. His shirt was stained with rain and Claire's blood, his hair disheveled. "You have to save her," he pleaded. "You can't let her die." The surgeon met his eyes, voice low but firm. "We're doing everything we can, but her condition's complicated. Preeclampsia, placental rupture. She's losing one of the twins." Ethan's knees nearly buckled. He gripped the cold metal railing for balance, fighting to keep from falling apart. "And the other baby?" The doctor hesitated. "We'll know soon. Pray for her." Across town, David Grayson finally arrived at the hospital, the scent of alcohol still clinging to him. He barked at the front desk. "Where's my wife?" "Claire Grayson, emergency admission." The nurse's polite smile faltered. "She's in surgery, sir. Are you family?" "I'm her husband," he snapped. "Put me in contact with whoever's in charge." When he stormed down the hallway, Ethan turned to face him. "You have no right to be here." David's expression twisted into contempt. "Excuse me? You left her bleeding on the floor while you played king of the rooftop." David's jaw tightened. "You don't get to talk to me like that. This is my wife, my children." "Your children?" Ethan's voice broke, low and dangerous. "Then maybe you should have acted like a father." The tension snapped like electricity. A nurse stepped between them before either could say more. "Please, both of you, this is a hospital." Through the glass window, Ethan caught a glimpse of the operating room. The surgeons moved quickly, their hands a blur of precision. Machines beeped steadily, but every few seconds, one of them screamed in alarm. Inside, Claire drifted in and out of consciousness. In her mind, she was back at the beach from their honeymoon, sunlight on her skin, David's laughter echoing through the wind. But something felt wrong. The water was cold, the sky darkening. A shadow stood where David had been, reaching out a trembling hand. "Ethan, don't give up, Claire," his voice whispered through the fog. "They need you." Her heart stuttered, the monitor spiking. One of the nurses shouted, "We've got a response, keep her stable." Minutes blurred into hours, then silence. The room filled with the high, piercing cry of a newborn. One baby, the surviving twin. The doctor exhaled with relief. "We've got her." One child breathing strong. Ethan's legs gave out, tears blurring his vision. David stood motionless, staring through the window at the tiny incubator. For a moment, the mask of arrogance slipped. He whispered, almost to himself. "One?" The surgeon stepped out, removing his gloves. "Your wife's alive for now, but she's in critical condition. She needs rest and monitoring. The baby's premature but stable." "Can we see her?" Ethan asked. "Family only." The doctor hesitated before adding quietly, "She listed both of you as contacts. So yes." Ethan stepped closer to the bed, looking down at Claire's pale face. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and whispered, "You're safe now. I'm here." Behind him, David's phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. "Leela, the press already has the story. What do we do?" David's eyes went cold. "We control it," he murmured, but for the first time in his life, David Grayson was about to lose control completely. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the blinds of room 407. Machines hummed softly around Claire's bed, the steady rhythm of her heart monitor echoing like a fragile promise that she was still alive. Her skin was pale, her lips cracked, but her chest rose and fell, proof that she was still fighting. Ethan sat at her bedside, unshaven, eyes bloodshot. He hadn't slept in 30 hours. His hand rested on hers, thumb tracing small circles on her skin, as if that alone could keep her tethered to the world. Every few minutes, his gaze drifted to the tiny incubator by the wall where the surviving twin slept, tiny, pink, and impossibly small. The baby's heartbeat monitor blinked steadily, a rhythmic counterpoint to Claire's. The door opened. Dr. Patel, the lead obstetrician, entered with a clipboard in hand. Ethan stood immediately. "How is she?" "She's stable," the doctor said softly. But it was close, too close. "We ran every test twice. Her organs were shutting down from the preeclampsia. If she hadn't been brought in when she was." His eyes met Ethan's. "You saved her life." Ethan exhaled shakily. "And the baby? She's doing well, considering. But there's something we need to discuss." Dr. Patel hesitated. "It's about the blood tests. We had to cross-match the baby's blood type for a potential transfusion. Something didn't line up." Ethan's heart skipped. "Didn't line up how?" "The child's blood type isn't compatible with Mr. Grayson's. It's impossible for him to be the father." Ethan's throat went dry. He turned toward the incubator, then back to Claire, unconscious and unaware that her secret was unraveling. "Are you sure?" "I'm certain," the doctor said. "We'll need to inform her husband when she wakes." Behind them, the door creaked open. David Grayson stood in the doorway, a cup of hospital coffee in one hand, his eyes sharp and calculating. "Inform me of what?" Ethan froze. Dr. Patel's expression tightened. "Mr. Grayson, perhaps we should discuss this privately." David stepped inside, his tone clipped. "No, doctor, you'll speak in front of my partner." His gaze flicked to Ethan, the word partner dripping with venom. The doctor cleared his throat. "The baby's blood work shows a mismatch. Biologically, it's unlikely to be yours." For a second, silence filled the room. Then David's laugh sliced through it like a knife. "That's absurd. Your machines must be broken." "We've verified twice," Dr. Patel said quietly. David's smile vanished. He turned slowly toward Ethan. "You were here all night. You knew." Ethan's jaw clenched. "I just found out." "You liar," David hissed. "You've wanted her since the day we met." Ethan didn't deny it. "Maybe, but you didn't deserve her." David's fist connected with Ethan's jaw before anyone could react. The crash echoed through the corridor. Nurses rushed in, pulling them apart. Claire's heart monitor spiked, beeping frantically. The commotion jolted her awake. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then locking onto the chaos around her. "David, Ethan, what?" Ethan grabbed her hand. "It's okay, Claire. You're safe." David's voice thundered. "Tell them, Claire. Tell them that baby's mine." Claire looked from one man to the other, confusion clouding her face. "What baby?" she whispered weakly. Dr. Patel stepped forward gently. "You delivered a daughter, Mrs. Grayson. She's stable, but there's an issue with the paternity results." The words seemed to hang in the air, unreal. Claire's eyes widened, then filled with tears. No, no, that can't be. Ethan's voice trembled. Claire, please don't panic. David pointed at him, seething. You think you've won? You think I'll let you destroy me? The baby whimpered softly in the incubator, the only pure sound in the room. Claire reached toward her with a trembling hand, whispering, She's all that matters. But behind the glass, Dr. Patel exchanged a glance with a nurse, because the other twins' blood results hadn't been destroyed yet, and the second baby's DNA told a very different story. The silence that followed was unbearable. The monitor beeped steadily. The baby's soft cries echoed like a haunting melody, and every eye in the room stayed fixed on Claire. She looked pale, terrified, her hand clutching the blanket as if it could anchor her to reality. David broke the silence first, his voice low and venomous. You cheated on me. Claire shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. David, no, it's not what you think. What I think, he snapped, stepping closer. You humiliated me in front of the entire city, and now this? You're carrying another man's child while wearing my name? Ethan moved between them. Back off, David. David's laugh was bitter. Of course you'd defend her. You've been circling her like a vulture since the day we met. The tension in the air was suffocating. Claire tried to sit up, but pain shot through her abdomen, forcing her back against the pillows. Please, stop. Just stop. Dr. Patel raised his hands. Mr. Grayson, this isn't the time for arguments. Your wife needs rest, and there's something else we discovered. David turned sharply. What now? The doctor hesitated. Before the surgery, we collected samples from both infants. The first child, the one who didn't survive, had a different blood profile. That baby was biologically yours. The words hung in the air like thunder. David froze, confusion flickering across his face. Mine? Dr. Patel nodded solemnly. It's an extremely rare phenomenon, heteropaternal superfecundation, when twins are conceived during separate ovulations with two fathers. Claire's eyes widened in horror. She pressed her shaking hands against her face. Oh my God, Ethan's breath caught. So, one was mine? The doctor nodded again. Yes, the surviving twin. David's face twisted, disbelief turning to rage. This is insane. You're saying my wife was, sleeping with two men within days? David, please, Claire whispered, sobbing. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was broken. You were gone and enough, he shouted. You disgust me. Ethan stepped forward. You have no right to talk to her like that. David turned on him, sneering. Don't play the hero now. You ruined everything. But Ethan didn't back down. No, David. You did that the moment you decided your image was worth more than your family. The room seemed to shrink around them. David's hands trembled, not with guilt, but fury. You think you can take what's mine? You'll regret it. Security arrived then, summoned by the shouting. A nurse guided David toward the door, insisting he calm down. Before leaving, he glared back at Claire, his voice low and poisonous. You just killed my son. The door slammed. Silence returned. Claire broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Ethan took her hand again, but she flinched. Don't, she whispered. You shouldn't be here. Claire, I destroyed everything, she said through tears. I didn't just lose a baby, I lost everything. Ethan's voice was rough. You didn't destroy anything, he did. You loved him, and he broke you. What happened between us was a mistake, yes, but it gave you a reason to live. That little girl in that crib, she's proof of that. Claire looked at the incubator, the tiny bundle of life breathing softly under the fluorescent light. Her heart ached with a mix of grief and love. I don't know how to face him. The world will hate me. Ethan shook his head. Then let them. You're still standing, Claire. And when the truth comes out, when people see the kind of man he really is, they'll know who to believe. Outside the hospital, reporters were already gathering. Someone had leaked the story. CEO's wife gives birth to twins from two fathers. Inside, Claire closed her eyes, whispering a prayer she wasn't sure anyone could hear. Because sometimes the truth doesn't set you free, it sets the whole world on fire. The next 48 hours turned the hospital into a fortress of flashing cameras and whispered scandal. News vans lined the street, reporters shouting questions to anyone in scrubs who stepped outside. Headlines blared across every digital screen. CEO David Grayson's wife gives birth to twins with two fathers, corporate empire in crisis. Inside, the chaos seeped into every corner. Claire's room was guarded by two security officers. The blinds stayed drawn, and her phone, confiscated by the hospital, sat locked in a drawer to keep the press from hounding her. But it wasn't the journalists that terrified her, it was David. He hadn't come back since the confrontation. Not once. But his power was everywhere. His legal team called every hour demanding statements, demanding paternity results, demanding silence. His PR firm released an official statement calling the rumors a tragic medical misinterpretation. Claire read it on a nurse's tablet and felt her stomach twist. A misinterpretation. As if her child's existence was an error. Julia Harper slipped into the room quietly that afternoon, wearing her scrubs and a look of fierce loyalty. "They're saying he's threatening to sue the hospital," she whispered. Claire sighed. "He'll blame anyone but himself." Julia sat beside her, taking her hand. "He's panicking. You have something he can't control now. Truth. And truth terrifies men like him." Tears welled in Claire's eyes. "Julia, I didn't want any of this. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted to survive." "I know," Julia said softly, "and you will. But you need to think ahead. He's already contacting child services. He's trying to take custody of your daughter." Claire's breath caught. "He can't. She's not even his. That doesn't matter. His lawyers will claim emotional distress, marital fraud, whatever sticks." Claire's pulse raced. "Then what do I do?" Julia hesitated, then leaned closer. "You call Ethan." At that same moment, Ethan was sitting in his car outside the hospital, watching the reporters swarm the entrance. His phone buzzed, an unknown number. When he answered, Julia's voice came through. "Urgent. She needs you. Now." He didn't hesitate. Within minutes, he was at her door, ignoring the disapproving nurse who tried to stop him. Claire looked up as he entered, her face pale but determined. "Ethan?" she whispered. He moved to her bedside. "I heard about David's lawyers. Don't worry, I'll handle it." "You can't fight him," she said weakly. "He'll destroy you too." Ethan smiled sadly. "He already tried, but he made one mistake. He underestimated how much I care." Julia closed the door behind them, glancing toward the hallway. "You two don't have much time. David's people are already in the building." Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. "This is a sworn affidavit from Dr. Patel. It confirms everything, both paternity tests, the medical complications, everything David tried to suppress. If he wants to fight dirty, we'll fight cleaner." Claire's hands trembled as she took the papers. "Ethan, why are you doing this?" "Because you deserve peace," he said. "And because that little girl in the incubator deserves a father who will never let her feel unwanted." Before Claire could respond, the door swung open. Two men in suits entered, flashing legal credentials. "Mrs. Grayson, we're here on behalf of Mr. David Grayson. You are required to surrender all medical records related to the birth." Ethan stepped forward. "You can tell your client he'll get those records when hell freezes over." The taller man smirked. "Then we'll see you in court." As they left, Julia locked the door. Claire clutched Ethan's hand. "He's not going to stop, is he?" Ethan's eyes darkened. "No, but neither will I." Outside, thunder rolled across Manhattan. Rain began to fall, tapping against the window like a warning. The war for the truth had begun, and only one of them would survive it with their soul intact. By the end of the week, Manhattan had turned Claire's tragedy into a spectacle. Every morning, headlines screamed her name like an accusation. "Infidelity scandal rocks Grayson Industries." "Pregnant wife betrays CEO." The photos were everywhere. Claire in her hospital bed, her face pale and fragile, Ethan standing beside her, the perfect villain for a world that loved gossip more than truth. David's PR team worked overtime. He appeared on television, solemn-faced and dignified, talking about his wife's fragile mental state and how the loss of their son had clouded her judgment. He spoke like a victim, every word crafted to gain sympathy. "I just want what's best for my daughter," he told the reporter, "even if that means forgiving the unforgivable." Claire watched the interview from her hospital bed, her jaw trembling. "He's turning me into a monster," she whispered. Julia muted the TV. "That's his weapon, public pity. But we'll hit him where it hurts, the truth." Ethan stood near the window, scrolling through his phone. "He's not just fighting for control, Claire. He's cleaning house. 2 board members who questioned him were fired this morning. He's scared." Claire closed her eyes. "He doesn't get scared. He destroys." Ethan turned to her, determination hardening his features. "Then we destroy him first." The plan started that night. Ethan met with a journalist he trusted, Olivia Reed, an investigative reporter known for exposing corporate corruption. They met in the dim corner of a diner on Fifth Avenue, away from the cameras. Ethan slid a flash drive across the table. Inside this are all of David's offshore accounts, falsified contracts and bribes, enough to bury him. Olivia's eyes widened. Why now? Because he went after someone who didn't deserve it. She studied him for a moment. You know, if I publish this, you'll go down with him, right? Ethan's jaw tightened. If it saves Claire, I'll take the fall. Back at the hospital, Claire held her baby girl for the first time without tubes or wires. The child's tiny fingers curled around hers, fragile yet full of life. She doesn't even know the world she's been born into, Claire whispered. Julia smiled faintly. Maybe she'll help change it. But their brief moment of peace shattered when the door burst open. A woman in designer heels strode in, Lila. Her beauty was as sharp as ever, but her expression was cold and venomous. Well, she said, her voice dripping with disdain, the poor school teacher. 3 days later, the storm outside had moved on, but the one inside, Claire's life, had only grown stronger. The hospital discharged her under a fake name to avoid reporters, and Julia helped sneak her and the baby out through a side entrance before dawn. Ethan was waiting in his car, the engine running, exhaustion etched into his face. As the city lights blurred behind them, Claire held her daughter close, the tiny heartbeat against her chest the only sound that grounded her. Ethan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You'll be safe at my place until we figure things out. David will find me, she whispered. He always does. Not this time, Ethan said quietly. I know his habits better than he knows himself. Ethan's apartment was nothing like David's penthouse. It was small, warm, filled with books and old jazz records. The simplicity made Claire's chest ache. It was everything her marriage wasn't. As she settled into the guest room, she found a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. But peace never lasted long in her world. The next morning, while Ethan was out meeting his lawyer, Claire's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You think you can hide? I built you. I can unmake you. DG. Her fingers shook. The fear she thought she'd escaped came rushing back. She set the phone down, her eyes landing on a small envelope resting on the dresser. One Ethan had left before leaving. The handwriting was familiar, precise. Her name on the front. Inside was a key and a note. If anything happens to me, use this key. The safe in my study. You'll understand everything. Her pulse quickened. She knew she shouldn't, but curiosity overpowered caution. She crept into the study, a quiet space lined with files and photographs. The safe sat behind a framed painting. With trembling hands, she inserted the key. The lock clicked open. Inside were folders, dozens of them, marked with names, dates, financial statements. And at the bottom, a single brown envelope labeled, Grayson Holdings Confidential. Claire's breath caught as she opened it. Inside were bank records, photos, and a signed agreement, evidence that David had been laundering money through offshore accounts for years. Attached was a letter from Ethan, written in his hurried scrawl. Claire, if you're reading this, it means David made his move. This is everything he's been hiding. Tax evasion, bribery, falsified audits. I was building a case against him to protect you. But now, this isn't about business anymore. It's about survival. Keep these safe. They're your shield. Claire sank into the chair, her heart racing. Ethan had risked everything, his career, his freedom, to protect her. Her daughter stirred in the next room, a soft whimper breaking the silence. She rushed over, holding the baby close, whispering, "We'll be okay, sweetheart. Mommy won't let anyone hurt you." But just as the words left her lips, the doorbell rang. Once, twice, then again, louder this time. She froze. No one knew they were here. She tiptoed to the window and peered out. A black sedan idled by the curb. 2 men in suits stood at the door, one of them holding an envelope. Her stomach turned to ice. From outside came a voice, cold and steady. "Mrs. Grayson, we need to speak with you regarding your husband's disappearance." Claire's blood ran cold. "Disappearance?" she whispered. The man repeated, "David Grayson's car was found abandoned near the Hudson River last night. No sign of him since." The baby began to cry softly as Claire clutched her tighter, her heart pounding in her chest. And in that moment, she realized, the war wasn't over. It had just turned deadly. Rain pounded against the windows as flashing red and blue lights reflected off the puddles below. Claire sat frozen in Ethan's living room, clutching her baby while the detectives paced around, jotting notes in their small black pads. The older one, Detective Ruiz, spoke first, his tone firm but measured. "Mrs. Grayson," he said, "your husband's car was discovered early this morning at Pier 47. Driver's door open, keys still inside, traces of blood on the steering wheel. No body." Claire's lips parted, but no sound came out. "You think he's dead?" Ruiz exchanged a glance with his partner. "We're not ruling anything out. Drowning's possible, but there's no sign of a struggle. We're investigating all angles, including foul play." Ethan entered from the kitchen, his jaw tight. "What are you suggesting?" Ruiz didn't flinch. "Mr. Miles, you were Mr. Grayson's business partner and the last known person to confront him publicly. We'll need a statement." Ethan crossed his arms. "I'll cooperate, but if you think I had anything to do with this, you're wasting your time." Ruiz scribbled something in his notebook. "We'll see. Don't leave town." After they left, the silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Claire rocked her daughter gently, her thoughts spinning. "Ethan," she whispered, "what if he's really gone?" Ethan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "If he's alive, he'll come after us. If he's dead." He trailed off, eyes darkening. "Then we need to be very careful, because someone might try to make it look like we're to blame." Claire stared at him. "You think someone set him up?" "I think someone wanted him gone. David had enemies, powerful ones. That file you found? It's evidence that could take down half the board at Grayson Holdings. If they think you have it." Her stomach dropped. "Ethan, what do we do?" He crouched beside her, his voice calm but urgent. "We stay quiet, we keep that folder hidden, and we trust no one." But trust had already become a fragile thing between them. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. Every sound made her jump. The creak of the floor, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant thunder. When she finally closed her eyes, flashes of memory tore through her dreams. David's voice shouting, his hand gripping her wrist, his reflection in the mirror, eyes full of rage. She woke up gasping. The clock read 2:47 a.m. The apartment was dark, silent. Ethan wasn't on the couch where he said he'd sleep. Panic surged through her. She rose, careful not to wake the baby, and crept toward the study. The door was ajar. Inside, Ethan sat at the desk, the light from his laptop casting his face in a ghostly glow. He was staring at the files from the safe, David's offshore accounts, coded transactions, and names she didn't recognize. "Ethan?" she whispered. He looked up sharply, guilt flickering across his face. "Claire, I didn't want to wake you." "What are you doing?" He hesitated. "I'm protecting us. I think I know who's behind this. Someone on the board named Vincent Rourke. He's been funneling money through David's accounts. If the police find out, they'll think David was running everything. We can use that." Claire frowned. "Use it how?" "Leverage," he said simply, "to keep you and your daughter safe." But before she could respond, his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He answered and froze. A distorted male voice came through the speaker. "You shouldn't have opened the safe, Mr. Miles. Some secrets are meant to stay buried." Ethan's eyes shot to Claire. The call ended abruptly. Outside, a car engine roared, headlights sweeping across the window. Someone was watching them, and whoever it was, they didn't come to talk. The headlights vanished as suddenly as they'd appeared, swallowed by the heavy rain outside. Claire's pulse hammered in her ears. "Ethan, who was that?" she whispered. He didn't answer right away. His hand hovered over the phone, knuckles white. "Whoever it was, they know we have the files," he said finally. A crash outside made both of them flinch. Something, or someone, had knocked over the trash cans near the alley. Ethan moved to the window, pulling the blinds back just an inch. A shadow darted past the corner. "Stay with the baby," he ordered. "Ethan, no. Don't go out there." But he was already grabbing his coat and slipping the small handgun from the drawer, the one Claire hadn't known he owned. He checked the chamber, then turned to her. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone." She wanted to argue, but the fear in his voice told her this wasn't the time. He slipped out, leaving the room in eerie silence. Claire pressed her back against the nursery door, clutching her daughter close. Every creak of the old apartment made her heart lurch. Minutes felt like hours. She could hear the faint echo of footsteps outside, the soft splash of boots on wet concrete. Then, Nothing. She was just beginning to think he'd scared whoever it was away when a loud bang jolted her to her feet. Glass shattered. She ran toward the sound, stopping short at the hallway. The front window was broken, rain pouring through. The curtains fluttered wildly. "Ethan?" No answer. Another noise came, not from the hallway this time, but from inside the study. A faint click, like metal against metal. She turned slowly, her breath catching. The study door, which had been open moments ago, was now half closed. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone to call 911. But the screen flashed no service. Her stomach dropped. Someone had jammed the signal. Then, a voice from behind the door, low, male, and calm. "You shouldn't have taken what wasn't yours, Mrs. Grayson." Claire froze, her throat tightened. "Who are you?" "Let's just say," the voice continued, "your husband made deals with people who don't forgive theft." She took a step back, clutching the baby tighter. "David's dead." A quiet chuckle. "Maybe, but his debts aren't." The door creaked open, revealing a tall man in a dark coat, water dripping from his hair. His eyes were cold, expression unreadable. He moved toward her with slow, deliberate steps. "Please," she whispered. "I don't know anything about his business. I just want to protect my daughter. Then hand over the documents." "I don't have them." He tilted his head, smirking. "Lying won't end well for you." Before he could take another step, Ethan appeared in the doorway, drenched and furious. "Back away from her." The man turned, his hand darting inside his coat. Ethan raised the gun. "Don't." For a heartbeat, the world stopped. The rain outside, the whimpering baby, the air itself, everything held still. Then came the deafening crack of gunfire. Claire screamed. The man staggered, grabbing his shoulder, and bolted toward the shattered window, disappearing into the storm. Ethan dropped the gun, breathing hard. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Who was that?" "Someone from David's world," Ethan said grimly. "And now they think we're part of it." He turned to the broken window, rain soaking the floor. In the distance, a black car peeled away into the darkness. Claire whispered, "We can't stay here." Ethan nodded, his voice hoarse. "No, we run tonight." But as he gathered the files from the safe, neither of them noticed the tiny red light blinking under the desk, a listening device still recording every word. By dawn, the city had turned gray, blanketed in a mist that clung to every window and street light. Ethan's apartment was wrecked, shattered glass, overturned furniture, muddy footprints leading to the broken window. Claire stood in the doorway, her daughter swaddled tightly in her arms. "Where do we go?" she asked, voice trembling. Ethan shoved files into a duffel bag, his movements quick and deliberate. "Somewhere David's people won't think to look. I've got a cabin upstate, off-grid, no cell service, no paper trail." Claire hesitated. "Ethan, if they find us..." "They won't," he said firmly, though his eyes betrayed uncertainty. Within minutes, they were in his car, merging onto the slick highway that cut through the sleeping city. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, leaving streaks of silver across the windshield. Claire stared out the window, her reflection pale and hollow. She still couldn't process what had happened. The gunshot, the intruder, David's disappearance. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, furious and accusing. "Ethan," she whispered after a long silence, "what if David's alive?" He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Then we'll deal with that when it happens." "But if he faked his death," she swallowed. "If he's the one sending people after us, then he's more desperate than I thought." Hours passed. The city faded into countryside, the road winding through forests that swallowed the light. By noon, they reached a narrow dirt path leading to a secluded cabin by a lake. Ethan parked behind a cluster of trees, scanning the area before helping Claire inside. The cabin smelled of pine and dust, untouched for years. A fireplace sat cold and empty. Ethan moved quickly, checking the locks, covering the windows, setting up a battery-powered radio. Claire laid her daughter on the bed, wrapping her in blankets. For the first time in days, there was quiet, a fragile, trembling peace. But peace never lasted long. While Ethan stepped outside to bring in supplies, Claire wandered the cabin, her eyes landing on a faded photograph pinned to the wall. It was Ethan, younger, standing beside David. They were smiling, arms slung around each other's shoulders, their company logo faintly visible on the banner behind them. She stared at it, her stomach twisting. When Ethan returned, she turned to him. "You and David, you built everything together. How did it come to this? Ethan exhaled heavily. David changed. Success made him ruthless. He started laundering money, threatening partners. When I tried to stop him, he blackmailed me with something from my past. Claire frowned. What past? Ethan hesitated. I wasn't always the man you think I am. Years ago, I took a loan from the wrong people David introduced me to. He bailed me out, but in exchange, I became his shield. I signed off on deals I didn't understand. I helped cover his lies. So when you said you were protecting me, I was trying to make things right, he said softly. For both of us. She looked at him, tears welling. You should have told me sooner. I was afraid you'd hate me. Before she could respond, the radio crackled. Static filled the room, followed by a voice distorted by interference. To the woman calling herself Claire Bennett, we know where you are. Hand over the documents, or your child won't make it to morning. Claire froze. Oh my God. Ethan grabbed the radio. Who is this? The voice chuckled darkly. You know who. Then, silence. Outside, a car engine roared in the distance, echoing through the trees. Ethan turned to Claire, his expression grim. Pack what you can. We're leaving. Now. But as they stepped outside, a figure emerged from the fog, dripping wet, eyes hollow, and Claire's heart stopped. For a moment, time froze. The mist thickened around the cabin, and Claire's breath caught in her throat. David stood just beyond the porch light, his clothes soaked, his face pale and hollow. The rain dripped from his hair, streaking mud down his cheek, but his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were still the same. Hello, Claire, he said softly. His voice sent a chill crawling down her spine. Did you miss me? Ethan stepped forward instantly, pulling Claire behind him. Stay back, David. David smirked, taking a slow step closer. You're protective, I'll give you that. Almost like you think she's yours. His gaze flicked toward the bundle in Claire's arms. Their daughter, stirring softly in her sleep. And in a way, I suppose she is. Claire clutched the baby tighter. You're supposed to be dead. Supposed to be, he echoed with a bitter laugh. I let the world think that. The car, the blood, it was all a setup. I needed to see who would crawl out from the shadows once I was gone. His eyes narrowed. And here you are, my wife and my best friend, together, hiding. David, Ethan said through gritted teeth, you tried to destroy her life. You used her. David tilted his head. And you used her too. Don't pretend you're the hero in this story. The accusation hung heavy between them. Claire felt her knees weaken. What do you want? He smiled faintly. What's mine? The company, the files you stole, the life you both owe me. Ethan's voice hardened. You're finished, David. I have proof of your crimes. Money laundering, fraud, everything. David laughed, low and sharp. You think that matters? I built that company on secrets. You expose me, you expose yourself. Every illegal deal has your signature too, Ethan. Claire turned to Ethan, eyes wide. Is that true? Ethan hesitated, jaw tight. He's twisting it. Am I? David said. Tell her about the shell accounts, Ethan. The ones under your name. The ones you used to fund her hospital bills. Claire's chest tightened. Ethan? He met her gaze, pain flickering in his eyes. I did it to keep you safe. David grinned triumphantly. See? There's no clean hands here, only debts, and I've come to collect. The wind howled through the trees, rattling the shutters. David took another step forward, his hand slipping into his coat pocket. Ethan reacted instantly, drawing his gun again. Don't, he warned. David froze, then slowly pulled out a small USB drive, holding it between two fingers. This, he said, is the only copy of my offshore ledgers, the same evidence you think you have against me. But guess what? It's encrypted. You destroy me, this stays locked forever. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. Am I? David asked softly. Then shoot me, end this, but you'll never clear your name, and Claire's daughter, my daughter, will grow up knowing her mother was part of the scandal that ruined everything. The standoff stretched into eternity. Claire felt the baby stir, her tiny hand gripping her finger. Her heart ached. She'd spent months drowning in fear and lies. Now it all came down to this moment. Please, she whispered, no more. David's expression softened, almost human. I never wanted to hurt you, Claire. I just wanted control. Ethan's grip on the gun trembled. You already lost that. David's eyes flicked downward, just for a second, but it was enough. Ethan lunged forward, knocking the USB from his hand. It skittered across the porch. A struggle erupted. Grunts, fists, chaos. Stop! Claire screamed, but the sound was swallowed by thunder. Ethan shoved David back, just as lightning struck a tree nearby. The branch came crashing down, splintering through the porch railing. When the smoke cleared, David was gone. Only his coat remained, draped across the mud, with the USB drive lying beside it, blinking faintly in the rain. The storm raged through the night, lightning flashing across the lake like nature's own interrogation light. Claire stood at the window, holding her baby, while Ethan searched the muddy porch for any trace of David. The rain had washed away footprints, blood, everything. Only the USB drive remained, half buried in the wet dirt, its tiny red light still blinking like a pulse that refused to die. Ethan wiped it clean and brought it inside. "He's gone," he said quietly, locking the door behind him. "But I don't know for how long." Claire's voice trembled. "You think he's still alive?" Ethan met her eyes, his jaw tight. "David Grayson doesn't disappear. He hides, he plans, and then he strikes." He set the USB on the table beside the old radio. Its metallic shell gleamed under the lamplight. "If this really holds everything he said it does, financial records, offshore accounts, it could expose everyone involved, including me." Claire looked at him, heart heavy. "You can't keep carrying his sins, Ethan. You're not him." Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "Maybe not, but I helped build the empire that destroyed you. That's on me." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the baby's soft breathing and the wind rattling the roof. Finally, Claire said, "Then let's use it. Let's end this." He glanced up. "You don't understand. If we open it, it could trigger a data wipe or alert whoever's still protecting David. We'd be walking targets." "Then we find someone who can break it," she said firmly. "Someone we trust." Trust. The word hung between them like a fragile bridge. By morning, the rain had stopped. Mist rolled off the lake and sunlight pierced through the clouds for the first time in days. Ethan brewed coffee while Claire rocked her daughter near the fireplace. For a fleeting moment, it felt like normalcy, like the world outside didn't exist. But that illusion shattered the moment Ethan's laptop chimed. An email notification blinked across the screen. "Unknown sender, I can decrypt your drive. Meet me at the old marina. Noon." Ethan frowned. "That's impossible. Only 3 people knew this USB existed. David, me, and Julia." Claire finished quietly. He looked at her. "You think She's the only one who'd still be trying to help," Claire said, though doubt edged her voice. Against his better judgment, Ethan agreed. They packed what little they had and drove back toward the city, taking back roads and changing routes twice to avoid any tails. The marina sat abandoned, the smell of rust and salt heavy in the air. Julia was already there, standing by the water, her hospital ID still clipped to her coat. She turned as they approached, a small smile breaking through the tension. "You got my message." Claire rushed to hug her. "I thought you'd vanished." "I almost did," Julia said. "The hospital suspended me after David's lawyers filed complaints, but I couldn't just walk away. I know what he's done." Ethan handed her the USB. "Can you open it?" Julia nodded. "I know someone who can. He used to work cybersecurity for the feds." But as she reached for the drive, something in her expression flickered. Too quick, too subtle. Ethan saw it. A hesitation, a calculation. Before he could speak, a phone buzzed in Julia's pocket. The caller ID flashed for half a second. DG Ethan's blood ran cold. "Julia, what did you do?" Her face crumpled, guilt washing over her. "I didn't have a choice. He found me. He said he'd ruin my family if I didn't bring it to him." Claire staggered back. "Julia, no." But it was too late. From the far end of the dock, an engine roared to life. A black speedboat cut through the fog, and standing at the helm, alive and smirking, was David Grayson. The engine's roar sliced through the silence like a blade. Spray from the river hit the dock as David's speedboat pulled closer, cutting through the fog with surgical precision. His hair was slicked back, his suit immaculate despite the chaos he'd left behind. Only his eyes betrayed the madness underneath. Sharp, cold, and burning with revenge. "Miss me?" he called, voice echoing over the water. Claire froze, clutching the baby instinctively. Ethan stepped in front of her, his hand hovering near the gun tucked beneath his jacket. "You should have stayed dead," he said through clenched teeth. David laughed, stepping off the boat with the grace of a man still convinced he was untouchable. "Oh, Ethan, you should know by now, people like me don't die that easily, especially when I still have unfinished business." His gaze shifted to Julia. She looked sick, her eyes wet with tears. David, I did what you asked. Please, just let them go. He smiled cruelly. Oh, Julia, always so loyal to the wrong people. David, stop! Claire's voice cracked, desperate. You've ruined everything already. Isn't that enough? Enough? He echoed, his tone almost tender. You stole my company, my reputation, my child. You paraded your guilt like it made you pure. No, Claire, it's not enough until you feel what I felt. Ethan pulled the USB from his pocket, holding it up. You want this? It's over, David. You can't cover your crimes anymore. The truth's coming out. David's smile faltered just slightly. You think I didn't plan for that? Every file you have leads straight back to you, Ethan. Fraud, money laundering, insider trading, all under your name. I made sure of it. Claire's heart pounded. He's lying. David turned to her, his voice calm, almost seductive. Am I? Ask your hero here where the money for your hospital bills came from. Ask him who signed off the offshore transfers to keep your name off the company's scandal reports. Ethan's been lying to you since day one. Ethan's face went pale. I did it to protect you, Claire. Her voice broke. Protect me? By becoming him? Before Ethan could answer, David drew a gun, small, black, and gleaming in the fog. Enough talking. Hand me the drive. Julia gasped. David, please. He turned the gun toward her. You don't get to beg. You made your choice. Without warning, Ethan lunged, tackling David as the gun went off. The shot echoed across the dock, birds scattering into the sky. The two men struggled, fists and fury colliding. The USB flew from Ethan's hand, skidding across the wet planks. Claire dropped to her knees, reaching for it, but Julia grabbed it first. Run! Julia screamed. Get out of here! Claire froze, torn between flight and fear. The baby started to cry, the sound piercing through the chaos. David kicked Ethan away, fury twisting his features. You think you can save her? You can't even save yourself. He aimed again. Julia didn't hesitate. She stepped between them. The gun fired. The sound was deafening. Julia fell instantly, blood blooming across her white coat. Claire screamed, clutching the baby close. Ethan roared, grabbing a piece of broken railing and slamming it into David's hand. The gun clattered into the river. David stumbled back, clutching his wrist. His eyes met Claire's, wide, desperate, unhinged. This isn't over, he hissed. Then he turned and dove into the water, vanishing beneath the dark waves. Ethan dropped to his knees beside Julia. She was pale, her breathing shallow. Stay with me, he begged. She smiled faintly. Just protect her. Her gaze flicked toward Claire and the baby. Then her eyes went still. Thunder rolled above, heavy and merciless. Claire whispered through tears. He'll come back. I know he will. Ethan nodded grimly, staring at the black water. Then we'll be ready. But neither of them saw the shadow surfacing near the far bank, a hand gripping the edge of the dock, dragging itself out of the river. The storm broke just before dawn, leaving the marina drowned in silence. Rainwater pooled between the planks, tinted faintly red where Julia's blood had mixed with the mud. Her body lay still beneath Ethan's jacket, a grim reminder of what loyalty had cost. Claire stood a few feet away, holding her daughter close, eyes hollow from shock. Ethan crouched beside the fallen nurse, whispering a quiet prayer he didn't really believe in. Then he rose, jaw clenched, determination hardening his grief. We need to go, now, he said. Claire's voice cracked. We can't just leave her. She wouldn't want us to die here too, he replied softly, his tone raw but steady. David's still out there. The name hung in the air like a curse. Claire looked toward the river, where the fog still drifted lazily across the surface. He can't survive that fall, she murmured. Ethan's eyes didn't waver. You don't know him like I do. They fled the marina, Ethan driving aimlessly through back roads until the city skyline disappeared behind them. By mid-morning, they reached an abandoned motel off the interstate. The neon sign flickered vacancy in dying red letters. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and cigarettes, but it was shelter, for now. Claire sat on the bed, rocking her daughter gently. What happens if the police find Julia? Ethan ran a hand through his hair. They'll assume David did it, but if he's alive, he'll twist the story. He'll make it look like we murdered her. Claire's throat tightened. Then we're fugitives. Until we clear your name, he said, setting the duffel bag on the table. The USB drive, miraculously still intact, glinted in his hand. This is the only thing that can destroy him for good. She looked at the tiny device as if it were cursed. That thing has killed everyone who's touched it. Ethan's lips pressed into a grim line. Then it's time we make it mean something. Before they could say more, a knock rattled the door. Soft, deliberate, wrong. Ethan froze. The baby stirred, whimpering. Claire whispered, "Who is it?" Ethan reached for his gun, his voice low. "No one knows we're here." Another knock, then a voice, calm, almost familiar. "It's Detective Ruiz." "Open the door." Ethan frowned. "How did he?" "Maybe the police traced us," Claire whispered, hopeful and terrified all at once. He motioned for her to stay back and cracked the door slightly, keeping the chain locked. Detective Ruiz stood outside, raincoat dripping, badge in one hand. His expression was grave but not hostile. "Mr. Miles, Mrs. Grayson, we need to talk." Ethan hesitated. "How did you find us?" Ruiz sighed. "You left a trail, son. Surveillance cameras at the gas station near the marina. The FBI is getting involved now. David's fraud ring is bigger than anyone thought." Claire stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Is he dead?" Ruiz met her eyes, unreadable. "That's what I came to ask you." Something in his tone made Ethan's stomach twist. "What do you mean?" Ruiz pulled an evidence photo from his pocket, a wet, crumpled image of a body washed ashore. The face was obscured by mud, but the watch on the wrist gleamed unmistakably. David's limited edition gold Omega. Claire gasped. "That's him." Ruiz didn't look convinced. "Maybe, but the body's DNA doesn't match David Grayson's. Someone wanted us to think he was dead." Ethan's heart sank. "A decoy." Ruiz nodded slowly. "Which means he's planning something, and he's using your names to do it." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "We'll never escape him, will we?" Ruiz's expression softened. "Not until you fight back the right way." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Ruiz leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I've seen David's kind before. He doesn't just want to win, he wants to destroy you publicly, so give him what he wants." Claire's brow furrowed. "What? Go public?" Ruiz said. "Tell the world the truth before he does. Make him the villain in his own story." The room fell silent. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, as if the storm wasn't over, only catching its breath. And in that silence, somewhere far from the motel, a pair of eyes watched their every move on a glowing screen. David Grayson was very much alive. 3 days later, the morning sun spilled over Manhattan, washing the skyline in gold. But for Claire, there was no warmth in it. Every news channel, every social feed buzzed with rumors about her, Ethan, and David Grayson's disappearance. The media painted her as a traitor, a widow, a liar. None of it was true, yet she knew David's fingerprints were all over every headline. Detective Ruiz's words were played in her mind. "Go public. Tell your story before he tells his." She looked at Ethan across the motel room. His eyes were ringed with exhaustion, his stubble darker than usual. "If we do this," she said quietly, "there's no going back." He nodded. "That's exactly why we have to." They had one card left, the USB drive. Inside it lay proof of David's fraud, his shell companies, his offshore laundering network. If they released it strategically, they could burn his empire to ash. But it would also drag Ethan into the spotlight, expose his role in David's cover-ups. Ethan knew it. Claire saw it in his eyes, the resignation, the quiet readiness to sacrifice himself. "You'll lose everything," she said softly. "I already did," he replied. "This is about giving you and your daughter a life he can't destroy." With Ruiz's help, they arranged a live interview with the Manhattan Chronicle, the biggest investigative network in New York. A journalist named Maya Torres, known for uncovering political corruption, agreed to hear their story on one condition: full transparency. When the day came, Claire's hands shook as she walked into the sleek, glass-walled studio. Cameras, microphones, lights, all pointed at her. Maya greeted her with a steady, empathetic gaze. "You're brave for doing this," she said quietly. Claire smiled faintly. "Bravery isn't what I feel right now." As the red live light blinked on, the world watched a woman many believed was guilty take a deep breath and begin. "My name is Claire Bennett Grayson," she said, voice trembling but clear. "For months, I lived under the control of a man who valued power more than people. My husband, David Grayson, built an empire on deception, and when I discovered the truth, he tried to destroy me to protect himself." Ethan sat off camera, listening as she detailed everything. The fake marriage facade, the abuse, the falsified ledgers, the money laundering. She didn't hold back. Tears ran down her face, but she kept speaking. "He didn't just manipulate me. He manipulated an entire company, an entire city. And when I became pregnant, he made sure my silence was the price for his image. Maya leaned forward. Mrs. Grayson, are you saying your husband is still alive? Claire met the camera's lens directly. Yes, and I have proof. Ethan handed Maya the decrypted USB drive. Within seconds, screens around the world began flashing screenshots of documents, transactions, signatures, corporate ties. The evidence was irrefutable. The broadcast exploded online. Within an hour, Expose Grayson was trending across every platform. Investors began withdrawing from Grayson Holdings. The FBI reopened their investigation, but victory came with a price. As the crew packed up, Ruiz called Ethan. You need to get out now. Someone leaked your location. It's all over the news. Claire turned toward the studio window. Across the street, she saw the flash of a black SUV pulling to the curb. Men in dark suits stepped out, scanning the building. It's him, she whispered. He's coming. Ethan grabbed her hand. We're leaving through the back. They raced through the service corridor, alarms blaring as security scrambled. Outside, the rain started again. Cold, relentless, merciless. They ran into the alley, hearts pounding. Behind them, the studio's big screen still played Claire's final words. The truth always finds its way out. From the SUV, David watched the broadcast, his jaw tight, his reflection merging with hers on the screen. He whispered, almost tenderly, Well played, Claire. But this isn't the ending. And as he stepped into the rain, he smiled, because he still had one secret left to reveal. Rain drenched the streets of Manhattan, washing away the last traces of sunlight. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, echoing through the canyons of steel and glass. Claire's heart pounded as she and Ethan sprinted through a narrow alley, the baby wrapped against her chest. Behind them, tires screeched. Black SUVs turning the corner. They're closing in, Ethan shouted. Keep running. Claire gasped, clutching the infant tighter. Her lungs burned, but adrenaline carried her forward. They burst into an underground parking garage, empty except for flickering lights and the hum of rainwater dripping through cracks in the ceiling. Ethan scanned the area. We'll hide until Ruiz gets here. But before he could say more, a voice echoed through the concrete. Smooth, familiar. No need to hide, old friend. David stepped from the shadows, soaked but unbroken, his tailored suit clinging to his frame. He looked like a ghost resurrected by vengeance. In his hand gleamed a gun, the barrel aimed steadily at Ethan's chest. Claire froze. David, stop. You don't have to do this. Don't I? He said, his voice calm but deadly. You went on television. You humiliated me. You destroyed everything I built. You destroyed it yourself, Ethan said quietly. We just told the truth. David's expression twisted. The truth? You mean your version of it? He took a slow step closer. You stole my company, my wife, my legacy, and now I take back what's mine. He turned the gun toward Claire. Give me the child. Claire's breath caught. She's not your daughter, David. His eyes burned with fury. She's the last piece of you that's mine. Ethan moved in front of her. You'll have to go through me first. David smirked. I was counting on that. A gunshot cracked through the air. Ethan staggered backward, clutching his shoulder. Claire screamed, grabbing him before he could fall. Blood stained his shirt, bright against the gray concrete. David advanced, his hand trembling now. You made me do this, Claire. You made me lose everything. But before he could fire again, a new voice cut through the chaos, sharp, commanding. Drop the weapon, Grayson. Detective Ruiz emerged from the ramp, his gun drawn, flanked by two officers. Red and blue lights flickered across the walls as sirens blared closer. David turned slowly, smiling like a man who'd already planned his ending. You think this is over, detective? You think you've won? Ruiz took a step forward. It's over. Drop the gun. David looked at Claire one last time, and for a fleeting moment, the mask cracked. She saw the man he'd once pretended to be, charming, ambitious, full of promise. Then the rage returned. He lifted the gun toward Ruiz. The sound of the shot echoed like thunder. When it faded, David was on the ground, blood spreading beneath him. The gun lay a few feet away, the light in his eyes fading fast. Ruiz lowered his weapon slowly, his expression grim. Claire sank to her knees, tears mixing with rain. Ethan, pale but conscious, reached out to her. It's over, he whispered, but she wasn't sure she believed it. Not yet. Paramedics rushed in moments later, tending to Ethan's wound. Ruiz crouched beside Claire, his voice softer now. You did it. The truth's out. His network's collapsing as we speak. You're free. Claire looked down at her daughter, the tiny heartbeat that had survived everything. No, she said quietly. We're starting now. Hours later, dawn broke over the city. The storm had passed. Claire stood outside the hospital beside Ethan, his arm in a sling. The world around them buzzed with news of David's death and the fall of Grayson Holdings. She turned to Ethan, smiling through her exhaustion. We made it. He reached for her hand. You did, Claire. You saved us all. She looked at her baby, whispering softly, no more lies, no more fear. And for the first time in forever, the morning felt like freedom. So that's how our story ends. You're still here, right? Still sitting with that quiet ache in your chest? If you are, maybe something in Claire's journey has touched you. Maybe because we've all been there in some way. Broken, afraid, but still choosing to fight back. Life has a strange way of testing our strength through pain. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the obstacle is the way. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every storm, they aren't meant to destroy us, but to carve us into who we're meant to become. Claire's story isn't just about revenge or survival. It's about reclaiming your voice after being silenced. It's about choosing truth, no matter how terrifying it feels. Sometimes healing doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from finally facing what hurt you and saying, you don't control me anymore. If this story moved you, even just a little, take a deep breath and remember, your pain can become your power. You are stronger than you think. Now, my friends, if you felt something tonight, give this video a like, share it with someone who needs hope, and don't forget to subscribe. We've got more stories waiting to remind you, you're never alone.